Alright guys, TacticalRab again today. Hope you're all doing well and enjoying your day so far. After scraping past Boston, reaching a Game 5 round 11 last night, Dashy has criticised the CDL format that we're currently experiencing, talking about the fact that we've had one tournament in the last 9 calendar months effectively. What are the changes going to be in the future, if any at all, with the future of the CDL? Why is Doug Martin as well returning to competitive play shortly after his retirement? Lots to dive into today. Very much into your thoughts in the comments below. Hit the like button if you enjoy. Subscribe if you're new as always, I greatly appreciate it. This I thought was a pretty insane clip, by the way. I know that HyDra's playing ranked or whatever he's doing here, but let's be honest, the level of censoring that this guy has. New York Subliners played today, by the way, which is rather exciting indeed. This, though, is Clayster. Here he goes. He was actually out after last night's game to a Western-themed emo night, which is why he was dressed up with a cowboy hat as follows. Thought it was, a pretty good look, to be fair. And Clay and team did take the victory last night up against the Los Angeles Grillers. It was an interesting series. It was kind of painful to watch at times. TJ had a bad map one, but then, to be fair, he did bounce back big time as time progressed. There was a bit of trash talk as well after this series. We know that Ravens, their weakness has kind of been in the search and destroys, but Gorillas got 3-0'd by Surge the other week, and I'm like, if you're getting 3-0'd by Surge, there's no way I can in good faith pick them to win a series. So, to be fair to Ravens, they've picked up some decent points recently, this stage so far, and they've actually advanced up the standings quite a little bit, as we'll see here in a couple of minutes' time. But yeah, Ravens, they win the game 1 in the end, they lose the Search and Destroy, but then they bounce back and win the control, and to be fair to Ravens, right, I know that Gorillas are pretty terrible, and everybody knows that to be true, but Ravens, their control was so bad, and I think Clay as an individual, unfortunately for him, probably has the worst control record, like, of all time in the CDL. Maybe that's not, to be fair, that probably is true. Like, his last few years haven't been great in control. That Subliners team in Cold War, obviously, he was only on the Subliners for a little bit at the start of Vanguard, but the last 2 years on Vegas and Ravens haven't been great in this mode, to say the very least, but they are starting to win it lately, so that's good news for them. High-rise control, they seem to be alright at. They win this one 3-1. Again, the Gorillas doing questionable stuff, and then after they do close out the control, they win the final half point as well to close out the series. So, Gorillas, arguably the worst team in the league right now. There are a few candidates down there to be the worst team in the league, but as it stands, the fact that Surge actually somehow beat this team the other week, probably they are the worst. And yeah, TJ gave some immediate post-game reactions, and I thought this is pretty funny as well from Sergeant Toast, of course, TJ. On P3 to P4, I thought to myself, what would Shotzzy do? They closed out the Skidra, of course, in the ends, and as Clay says, beat LAG 3-1. And an important result for those guys, absolutely. This, though, was some of the trash talk, right? Because Gorillas clearly have lots to change and to work on. Their current roster isn't it. They're going to have to do something, surely. And as Gwyn says, can somebody chal at all? All creddy corners, no gunny. Those guys suck. And obviously I screenshot of this because I expected by the time the morning came out this might have been deleted. But no, not the case at all. Gwyn is standing up business here and he's kept this tweet up, basically just roasting Gorillas for playing terrible, scared cards. And remember, that is true for some of those guys. They're like sitting in corners getting kills, but, you know, no confidence, no gunny. Those guys suck, as he says. So Gorillas, they're now 0-4. It was a whitewash, really, in the slaying department here for the Ravens, and Clay and Fellow both in the green, which is not something you see all the time. I will say, though, TJ turned up, but also Gwyn just always tends to do well against the teams that he should play well against. I think that's what's impressed me by Gwyn, really. Like, he's been good against the top teams as well, but when they play a series that Ravens need to win, Gwyn almost always delivers, and I think we saw that again yesterday. What do you do, by the way, if you're the Los Angeles Grillers right now? Again, I think Estriel is probably the only guy really making plays on this team. Like, I think all of the other guys, I'm very, questioning whether they should be on the team for too much longer, really. Domancon was great at the start of the season. That's fallen away. Assault is consistently very underwhelming. He even had less than 12,000 damage that series, which for a series that goes to 4... is not great, because Simp had 12,000 plus damage in 3 maps yesterday, and that's not even with entirely new hardpoints that they played. So, I don't know what you do if you're Gorillas, but I feel like you've got to try something, and they have Flames as their bench player. They could give that a go, but making a change before the Major seems unlikely. They're probably going to ride it out and see what happens after the Major. There are some options in challenges, as we shall discuss right about now, because Doug Martin, he retired recently from professional Call of Duty. Obviously, he's been around at the amateur side now for some time with the Boston Academy, and he'd call it a day, hang up the sticks, and, emotional moment. Now, Doug is returning. He's not fully returning. It's only a short short-term thing. But as Doug says here, yesterday, warming up with Toronto Ultra because I've received official word that I'll be replacing Cammy on the Boston Academy for a very specific situation we will discuss. So here's Doug playing with Insight CleanX and Scrappy here, getting ready to go, warming up the gun skill and everything for, well, in a ranked game here for what is coming soon, because as Doug says, tomorrow's Challengers Cup, so i.e. today and for, you know, the rest of the weekends, Doug is going to be playing in this. People were like, why? Has Cammy been signed or something like that? Was the immediate reaction. Like, hang on a second, right? Cammy's been frying in Challenger since he's gone down there. Just won the Elite a couple of days ago with the Boston Ridge Academy. Was the MVP of the entire thing, the MVP of the finals. Like, you know, Cammy MVP back in business in Challenges, getting some confidence back and certainly setting himself up as the #1 candidate from that, like, second AR flex position to get a role back in the CDL. I think he will at some point. Where is a question, because there are multiple teams that could benefit from Cammy's services if he plays at the level that I think people still think that he can, but he just hasn't shown for the last couple of years. And as I said yesterday, the jury is definitely out on whether we can see that Cammy again, but there's been some talkers put him with a more traditional main AR, then Cammy's going to be more happy. There's a few teams to which that applies. Doug says to this guy, look, chill, my guy, they just hit me up to play. And the reason why this is the case, to our understanding, is, as Yi says here in the chat of Zuma's stream last night, Cam is getting his stuff from LA. So, yeah, here's him back in LA, selling his Herman Miller, so if you guys are interested, then let him know. But he's back in LA, I think, sorting out whatever the case was, right? Because he was with the Los Angeles Thieves briefly, now he's with Boston, so I'm guessing he's got to sort some stuff out. So they won the Elite, he's going to miss this Challengers Cup. Doug is going to play for him instead, which is really interesting to see how they can do with Doug back on that team. So it's funny, right? You retire, but then, well, you know, you want me to come back here? Well, whatever, I'll play one tournament with the boys again. So I don't know, we'll see how it goes for Doug. But of course, Cammy is definitely taking some headlines at the moment. Speaking of Cammy, we were discussing him on the dope check pre-show we did before last night's matches begun on the Breaking Point channel. It's still available as like a VOD or whatever of the live stream if you guys want to go check it out. But during this, on the Twitch stream, so we did it on Twitch and YouTube, we were talking about Cammy. And RCDs was in the chat saying, Cammy is so good, somebody trade me, please. The point we were making was, like, despite the fact that a lot of the fans have said, you know, Cammy's no longer it, a lot of the pro players still rate Cammy quite highly, and I feel like that's why he's going to get a shot again, even though if the community had to vote, that might not necessarily be the case. But RCDs basically gasses up Cammy and says, please, somebody get my trade. Kind of funny, right? Because RCDs, of course, on the Seattle side, they're struggling. The question is, like, is RCDs really so happy with the whole aBeZy, like, you know, Brezzy situation on the team? Possibly not. And maybe RC's like, look, put Cammy with me, that could be a different story. And then I think I made the point of, like, okay, what are the GMs doing? What are the general managers doing? Are they not trying to have conversations with Cammy about this? And RC says, you know, GMs, they're all busy right now. So interesting what that potentially means for Ramo Ray and that team, but I thought I'd mention it. Last night, of course, though, OpTic played the Boston Breach. It was a Game 5 round 11, absolute grueler that Shotzzy had a ridiculous series to close out the job. And just have a look at this. In the last few matches that they've played, well, certainly against Ravens and Boston, sure, teams that you'd expect Shotzzy to play well against, but I mean, in the last couple of games he's played, he's 202 and 124, 1.63 overall KD, 5-0 in stage 2. Shotzzy's now 30-0, is still ridiculous, against Slasher in his career. And Shotzzy also is second place in the most maps with a 1.5 KD or better here in Modern Warfare 3. So this is most maps. The leader, as I'm sure you could guess, is Cellium at 25. Shotzzy, though, has 19, which is very impressive for an SMG player because, you know, HyDra, kind of interesting for HyDra, right? Because the start of the season, I think he was really good for the first couple of weeks. Then your Subliners had a bit of a regression, but over the last couple of weeks now, he's looked incredibly good again, as we saw by that video right at the start of the video. So, yeah, HyDra's at 14, and then you've got other ARs. Insight's at 15 maps that he's played at a 1.50 KD or better. Drazah's at 15, Cell's at 25. I mean, just Cellium things, to be honest. But Shotzzy here at 19 is actually really impressive. But as we talked about yesterday, it is the search and destroy that's going to be interesting for OpTic, certainly going into tomorrow's series where they play Toronto Ultra, right? Because that's going to be a very fascinating game. It's the first time that OpTic have played Toronto this season. Let's not forget actually what JP said I think it was just after Major 1 when he said that they match up better against Toronto than they do against FaZe in practice. So we'll see if that works out to be true in reality. But actually, this is an interesting stat here, that OpTic's plant win percentage is the lowest in the league. So as you can see here, these are the percentage of rounds where they plant, and these are the percentage of rounds that they win the round after planting. The discrepancies here, I think, are actually kind of remarkable, right? The fact that teams are so different on this. Toronto, for example, they plant on their offenses in like 59% of rounds they get the bomb down. That's way more than anybody else manages. Against, Vegas, for example, are at 54% of rounds, and that's number 2. Carolina are at like 33% plants, right? So only a third of offenses they even get the bomb down, which is not great. And Toronto not only plant the bomb loads of the time, but also they win 90% of the time they plant the bomb, which is a really high number, actually. Now, it's always going to be above 50, but OpTic's post-plant win percentage is only 59%. Now, this does sometimes depend on the conditioning, what maps you like to play, how easy retakes are, but I think a discrepancy to this degree, even, they're down here with Boston, with Carolina, with Minnesota, not good search and destroy teams this season. And OpTic, despite having the 4th highest plants percentage at just over 50%, they actually have the worst plant win percentage. So that's just one thing to look at. But Dashy as well was discussing the tournament format this season, and there's been lots of complaints about this all over esports. Valorant is also a nightmare as well. You guys may know I've covered that on another channel, but the COD format isn't great. I think what frustrates me really is the fact that we have 7 online qualifiers, and yet, you're not playing the entire round robin. There's only 11 teams to play. Teams only play 7 games. Like, they could just play 11 and have more games on the weekends, or have games going on simultaneously. That would make a lot more sense. But also just more tournaments, right? We went through a massive off-season. The game started later than would have been ideal. And to be fair, Dashy's right. You look at the calendar, Champs was in June, right? So we've had July, August, September, October, November, December, January, February, and here we are now in March. So that's 9 months, and we have had 1 tournament. Since the World Championship, we've only had Major 1 that went on in January in Boston, right? That's everything we've done. And to make matters worse, it's only 1 game per weekend for many of these teams. So deeply frustrating. I don't know what the future is going to be. If the CDL continues to exist next season, let's be honest, it's probably not getting any better than this. And also the scheduling is kind of frustrating as well. The fact that Major 2 happens in Miami. There's 2 or 3 weeks off, I think maybe 2 weeks off. Then after that, all the qualifiers happen for Toronto's Major 3. Then there's no break at all. Straight into the Major 4 qualifiers, straight into Major 4, then the break before the World Championship. So just the scheduling is all over the shop. That we had so many months off for no reason at all. And then it's just all out like hellfire, really, from April and beyond. But a couple of things to say. These are the standings as it stands. So the Subliners are 5-0, OpTic are 5-0, FaZe are 4-1, Toronto are 4-1, Vegas are 3-1. We have Ravens now at 2-3, so they're up to P7 here in this standings for now. A few teams are 0-5. Somebody's going to go 0-7. Surely that's going to happen. And in the season standings, Boston and Thieves are now stone cold dead last, because Ravens have got up to 45 after their victory yesterday, and 55 is champs. 50 is champs qualification. So it really is all to play for down here, and it's really difficult to call. Today, however, we do have some rather telling games. Gorillas Subliners. I think probably the less said about this series, the better. So let's just move onwards. Rocket versus Surge. Again, it's like, come on, right? This day may be interesting for all the wrong reasons, to be fair. Rocket have struggled to win a Game 5. Maybe Surge can do something here. But look, Rocket are 0-5 right now. Surge at least have a win under their belt. We were calling them the worst team like in the history of the CDL, which I feel like in some sense was kind of justified, to be fair. But, they ended up beating the Gorillas, and now they play Rocket. I just feel like Rocket have to be favoured in this one, right? If they lose to Surge, it's just got to be complete blow it up mode at that point. But I feel like Rocket are going to do something in this one. To be fair, though, Surge's Search and Destroy is pretty good. And if it goes to 5, I think you've got to favour Surge in that scenario, which is kind of scary. But I think I'm going to go Rocket 3-1. And then FaZe Boston to close out the day. Tough weekend for Boston, right? But I think this is going to be an interesting series, because Boston went Game 5, Round 11 with OpTic just last night. FaZe handle business on Thieves. This is an interesting series for FaZe to show OpTic how it's done against Boston, or even for Boston to try and get 10 points on the board, because, if they go down to the way they did to OpTic and they get slammed by FaZe, they know that they're not at the level they need to be at to actually win anything, and that's going to be quite telling. But realistically, Subliners, FaZe, Who knows about this middle series? Probably the Minnesota Rocker. Thankfully, though, the Sunday games are actually absolute bangers, I would say. So, of course, we'll get into that tomorrow, but very much interested your thoughts on all this stuff in the comment section below. Hit the like button if you enjoyed. Subscribe if you're new. Take care, and I'll see you next time.